I woke up to the sound of hammering outside my window. Not the gentle kind that might indicate a neighbor hanging a picture, but the aggressive, persistent kind that signals your day is about to be ruined. I rubbed my eyes, pulled back the curtains, and nearly had a heart attack. My meticulously maintained front yard, the pride of my weekend efforts for 3 years, had been transformed overnight. White chairs in neat rows, a floral arch, tables with linen cloths, caterers moving about, and in the center of it all, a woman with a severe blonde bob and sunglasses perched on her head, pointing and barking orders as if she owned the place. Recognized her immediately. Victoria Reed, the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood's homeowners association, the woman who had made living in Whispering Pines a personal hell for everyone who didn't conform to her vision of suburban perfection. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, throwing open my front door, still in my pajamas. Victoria turned slowly, her face morphing into that fake pleasant mask she wore when she was about to say something particularly nasty. "Good morning, Michael. Lovely day, isn't it?" Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness. "Why is there a wedding set up in my yard?" My voice was trembling with rage. "Oh, didn't you get the notice?" She fluttered her manicured hand dismissively. "Your property has been selected to host my daughter Ashley's wedding ceremony this afternoon. It's quite an honor, really." "Honor? This is trespassing. Get off my property now before I call the police." Victoria's smile vanished. "Section 17, Paragraph B of the HOA bylaws clearly states that community events can utilize front yards with appropriate notice. The notice was emailed 3 days ago. I never received any—" "Check your spam folder," she interrupted. "And while we're discussing violations, Michael, your grass was 0.3 inches above regulation height last week. That's a $150 fine. And your garbage bins were visible from the street for more than 12 hours on Tuesday. Another $200. Oh, and that bird feeder?" She pointed to my small wooden feeder. "Not on the approved list. $75. My blood boiled. "This is extortion. This is community standards," Victoria replied coldly. "Now, unless you want to deal with another $500 in fines for obstructing a sanctioned event, I suggest you go back inside and let us finish." I felt trapped. Victoria had manipulated the HOA rules to become her personal weapon. She had systematically bullied half the neighborhood into submission through intimidation, selective enforcement, and her network of spies disguised as concerned neighbors. I slammed my door and immediately called the police. 15 minutes later, a young officer named Rodriguez arrived. He listened to my complaint, looked uncomfortably at Victoria's paperwork, and shrugged. "Sorry, sir. This appears to be a civil matter between you and your HOA. If they have bylaws allowing this use with notice, and they claim notice was provided," he trailed off. "She's lying. There was no notice." Officer Rodriguez looked sympathetic but helpless. "You'll need to take that up with your HOA board or pursue civil action." After he left, I sat on my couch fuming. Victoria had won again. She was hosting her daughter's wedding on my property without permission, and there seemed to be nothing I could do about it. A knock at my back door startled me. It was Tom Henderson from across the street, looking nervously over his shoulder. Before slipping inside when I opened the door, "I saw what's happening," he whispered. "It's not right, Michael." "No kidding. Any ideas?" Tom hesitated. "You didn't hear this from me, but Victoria's been embezzling from the HOA fund for months. This wedding? She couldn't afford a proper venue. She's using association money and forcing it onto your property to save thousands." My jaw dropped. "How do you know this?" "My wife Nancy is the HOA treasurer. Victoria thinks she's just a rubber stamp, but Nancy's been documenting everything. We've been building a case quietly." "Why not expose her now?" Tom's face darkened. "Because Victoria destroyed the last person who crossed her. Remember the Millers? She engineered their financial ruin with fines until they had to sell at a loss. To her sister-in-law conveniently. We need solid proof." I looked out my window at the wedding preparations advancing like an invading army. My yard was unrecognizable. "I'm not waiting for your paper trail, Tom. I'm going to stop this today." Tom grabbed my arm. "Be careful. Don't do anything illegal. That's exactly what she wants. An excuse to bury you." As he slipped out, an idea began forming in my mind. I remembered the old, rusty irrigation system the previous owner had installed. It hadn't worked properly in years, which is why I hand-watered my lawn. But it was still connected. And with a few adjustments, I smiled for the first time that day. Victoria thought she could take my property? Fine. But she'd get more than she bargained for. I spent the next 3 hours in my garage and yard, working frantically. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m., giving me precious little time. I retrieved the old control panel for the irrigation system from my basement and replaced the corroded wiring. I checked each sprinkler head, clearing mineral deposits and checking pressure. The system was ancient, which worked to my advantage. These old sprinklers could blast water with surprising force. From my basement window, I watched Victoria's minions transform my yard. The rental company delivered a white tent. Florists arranged bouquets on pedestals. A DJ set up speakers. Caterers prepared serving stations. Victoria strutted about like a general inspecting troops, occasionally casting smug glances toward my house. At 3:15 p.m., guests began arriving. I watched as they parked along the street and walked up my driveway as if they owned it. Victoria greeted them, all smiles and graciousness, the perfect hostess on my property. I flipped through the HOA bylaws frantically, looking for anything to support my case. Nothing. Victoria had either manipulated the rules or was outright lying. Either way, I had no immediate recourse through official channels. At 3:45, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A water tanker truck backed into my driveway. Workers quickly connected hoses to it and began filling a decorative fountain they'd placed in the center of my yard. "That's it," I muttered. They were literally importing water onto my property while I was planning to soak them with mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 3:55, the music started. Guests took their seats. I saw Victoria's daughter Ashley in a separate tent, her white dress visible through the opening. The groom and minister took their positions under the floral arch. Positioned myself at my basement window with the irrigation controller in hand. My finger hovered over the button. I was about to ruin a wedding. Someone's special day. Was I really going to do this? Then I saw Victoria at the back of the aisle, preparing to walk her daughter down. Her face was a picture of triumph. Not the joy of a mother on her daughter's wedding day, but the smug satisfaction of someone who had once again bent others to her will. I pressed the button. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then I heard it, the groaning of old pipes coming to life. The first sprinkler head popped up near the minister, who stared at it in confusion. Then another, and another. When the water erupted, it wasn't the gentle spray of a modern irrigation system. It was a pressurized blast of rusty, dirty water that had been sitting in those pipes for years. The minister was the first casualty, taking a direct hit that left him sputtering and soaked. The front row of guests jumped up screaming as water hit them next. Chaos erupted. People ran in all directions, tripping over chairs. The DJ dove to protect his equipment but was too late. His speakers sparked dramatically as water hit them, cutting the music with a screech. The wedding cake collapsed as its table became unstable in the suddenly muddy ground. Victoria's screams were the loudest. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" she shrieked, her perfectly coiffed hair now plastered to her head, mascara running down her cheeks. I stepped outside onto my front porch, controller still in hand. "Get off my property!" I shouted over the commotion. Victoria spotted me and charged forward, slipping twice in the mud. You did this! I'll destroy you!" "This is my yard," I yelled back. "And you had no right to hold this event here." "I had every right," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "The HOA bylaws don't exist," I shouted. "I've read every page, Victoria. There's no provision allowing you to commandeer private property for events. You lied." The guests, soaking wet and angry, had stopped fleeing and were now watching our confrontation. Several had phones out recording. "And while we're at it," I continued, "why don't you explain to everyone how you paid for this wedding with stolen HOA funds?" A collective gasp went through the crowd. Victoria's face went white. That's absurd," she stammered, but her confidence was crumbling. Tom stepped forward from the crowd. "No, it's not. I have the documentation right here." He held up a folder protected in a plastic bag. Bank statements, falsified meeting minutes, forged signatures. You've stolen over $30,000 from our community fund." Ashley, Victoria's daughter, pushed through the crowd in her now ruined wedding dress, mud splattered across the white fabric. "Mom? What are they talking about?" Victoria's face hardened. "They're lying, sweetheart. These people have always been jealous of us, of our position in this community." "Position?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean your self-appointed dictatorship? The way you've terrorized everyone with fake violations and manipulated rules?" Another neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who rarely spoke at meetings, suddenly called out, "She fined me $200 last month because my roses were non-regulation colors." This opened the floodgates. Suddenly everyone had a story. "She ticketed my car for being an unapproved shade of blue. She measured the height of my Christmas decorations with a ruler. She told me my disabled mother couldn't visit because walkers detract from neighborhood aesthetics." Each accusation landed like a physical blow. Victoria was backing away, her eyes darting from side to side like a cornered animal. David, Ashley's fiancé, stepped forward. "Is this true? You stole money to pay for our wedding?" "I didn't steal anything," Victoria hissed. "I temporarily reallocated funds that were being wasted on unnecessary improvements." David's face hardened. "We're done. The wedding's off." He turned to Ashley. "I'm sorry, but I can't marry into this." He gestured at Victoria. Ashley burst into tears and ran off, followed by her bridesmaids. David walked away in the opposite direction, ignoring Victoria's calls to come back. In the midst of the chaos, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. By the time the police arrived, my yard looked like a battlefield. Mud everywhere, overturned chairs, abandoned food and decorations. Guests in formal wear streaked with dirt huddled in groups, giving statements to officers. The water had finally stopped, not because I turned it off, but because the ancient system had given out after its heroic final performance. Victoria sat alone on the curb, her designer outfit ruined, staring blankly ahead as an officer questioned her. Ashley was nowhere to be seen. The caterers and rental staff were packing up, clearly eager to distance themselves from the disaster. Officer Rodriguez was back, looking considerably less relaxed than during his earlier visit. "So," he said, approaching me, "want to explain? What happened here?" I told him everything. Victoria's invasion, the fake HOA rules, the embezzlement allegations. Tom provided his folder of evidence, which the officer flipped through with increasing interest. "This is substantial," Rodriguez said finally. "We'll need formal statements from both of you. Financial crimes aren't my department, but I'll make sure this gets to the right people." He glanced at Victoria. "For now, though, this looks like a civil trespass at minimum. You had every right to ask these people to leave your property." I felt vindicated but hollowed out. My yard was destroyed. The conflict had been brewing for years, and now that it had exploded, I felt strangely empty. As the crowd thinned, Nancy, Tom's wife, approached me. "Thank you," she said quietly. "We've been trying to build a case against her for months, but she's so careful with her paper trail. This forced everything into the open." "What happens now?" I asked. "The HOA board will call an emergency meeting. There will be an audit, and based on what Tom's found, probably criminal charges." I nodded, too exhausted for more words. By evening, my yard was empty except for the debris. I sat on my porch with a much-needed whiskey, surveying the damage. The mud would dry. The grass would recover. The physical scars would heal faster than the community ones. My phone buzzed with texts and social media notifications. Apparently, multiple guests had posted videos of the sprinkler ambush and Victoria's subsequent meltdown. I was becoming a local legend. HOA showdown was trending in our community groups. Around 8 p.m., a car pulled up in front of Victoria's house across the street. I watched as she emerged, carrying 2 suitcases. She loaded them into her trunk, then stood looking at her house for a long moment. I couldn't see her face in the darkness, but her posture spoke of defeat. As she turned to get in her car, she spotted me on my porch. We locked eyes across the distance. I expected rage, threats, something vicious. Instead, she just looked broken. Without a word, she got in her car and drove away. The next morning, I woke to blessed silence. No Victoria, no HOA drama, Just the birds singing and the sight of my ruined lawn. I made coffee and returned to my porch, surveying the damage in daylight. It was bad but fixable. A clean slate, in a way. My phone rang. It was Tom. "Emergency HOA meeting tonight at the community center," he said without preamble. "Victoria's resigned. The board's in shambles. There's talk of dissolving the HOA entirely." Dissolving it? The thought was both thrilling and unsettling. What would our neighborhood be without the oppressive structure we'd all grown to hate, but somehow depend on? Yeah, turns out Victoria was the glue holding that bureaucratic nightmare together. Without her, nobody wants the hassle. We were silent for a moment, contemplating the new reality. "Oh, and Michael?" Tom added. "Bring a shovel to the meeting. We're taking a community vote on helping restore your yard this weekend. Seems like the least we can do." After we hung up, I sat looking at my yard in a new light. What had begun as an invasion had become something unexpected. A chance for actual community. Not the enforced, regulated version Victoria had created, but something organic and genuine. My phone buzzed with another notification. A private neighborhood app message from Ashley. "I'm sorry about what happened," she'd written. "I had no idea what my mother was doing. David and I are working things out. We still want to get married, just somewhere else, and with our own money. I hope you can forgive me for my role in all this." I typed back a simple reply. "Nothing to forgive. Good luck." As I sipped my coffee, I noticed something remarkable. Neighbors were emerging from their houses, greeting each other, stopping to chat at property lines. Without Victoria's watchful eye, people seemed lighter, more open. Mrs. Jenkins was planting non-regulation purple roses. The Thompsons' kid was setting up a basketball hoop that would have earned them a $300 fine yesterday. Someone was painting their door bright red. Small acts of rebellion. Or maybe just people living their lives on their own terms. I smiled and raised my coffee mug in a silent toast to my ruined yard. Sometimes destruction was necessary for new things to grow. And from the mud and chaos, something better might emerge. A neighborhood defined not by rules and fear, but by the messier, more authentic connections of actual community. Victoria had tried to take my property. Instead, she'd inadvertently freed us all.